Ryan said his mother believed she had given him roughly $5,000 over years of viewing, but that she would have given Fuentes her whole income if she could. After she died, Fuentes said she had been, quote, a real salt-of-the-earth person. Fuentes said on stream he would pay a visit to Ohio. Fuentes did not respond when the Post asked him whether he would visit. What a sick person he is, actually. Guys, up first, we're going to talk about a really disturbing but fascinating expose that was just done into Nick Fuentes and the finances of how he gets his funding and his money, which apparently he's doing quite well for himself, and some of the stories about who's funding him and how he's betrayed some of these diehard fans and just led them to very deranged places are genuinely quite sad. Now, this all comes courtesy of a Washington Post article that was just released, but Nick Fuentes did respond to their request for comment and doesn't actually dispute the figures or stories in the story, though I'll of course mention what he said about it as well. Anyway, the streamer, y'all know I'm not a fan of Nick Fuentes, partially because of his horrifying views on gay people, women, black people, and all the extreme things he says. I can simultaneously acknowledge that he's clearly like a talented performer and charismatic and funny, but at the end of the day, he incites a lot of hatred and spreads a lot of crazy extremist and has normalized a lot of crazy extremism. So I think he is a malicious and hateful influence on our politics, but he's apparently running quite a lucrative business for himself. So here is the headline from the Washington Post. He spreads hate online, and fans pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars. The far-right influencer Nick Fuentes has pocketed roughly $900,000 from fanatical donors since the start of 2025. Some superfans see him as part of their families. So listen, this is not even Nick Fuentes specific at this point, but if there's somebody you watch, there's something called a parasocial relationship. And a little bit of it is okay. Like, it's okay to feel like, you know, the person you watch, you understand them and they like people like you. But if you find yourself thinking that this political commentator that I watch or this streamer that I listen to is unironically part of my family, you need to log off. You've officially spent too much time on the internet. You need to touch grass and reconnect with your actual family. A person who does not know you or know your name, doesn't know what you look like, doesn't know that you exist, isn't your family. It's just, that's very unfortunate because also, obviously that's just the subtitle that we're reading there, but that's actually how some of these people feel. Anyway, we're going to focus on one of these people that was profiled in this Washington Post story, a woman named Christine Kasubinski. Christine Kasubinski's donation appeared on viewers' screens 4 hours into the live stream of Nick Fuentes, the far-right influencer she often called her second son. Quote, I pray daily for your safety, she wrote one night last August, sending Fuentes a $50 digital gift. I would become a Charles Bronson vigilante to anyone who harmed you. Keep up the fight. Again, I don't like Nick Fuentes, but I, of course, don't want him to be harmed in any way. And I've spoken out against for example, somebody went to his home and tried to confront him. And I don't support violence against anybody, even distasteful extremist figures like Nick Fuentes. But if you think about this person as your second son and you fantasize about harming anyone who harms them, this isn't normal or good. This is deeply, deeply unwell. And we should probably realize that and reckon with it. So here's more from the Post here, and this is where things start to get crazy. For 7 years, I'll just go by her first name because I don't want to mispronounce her last name. Christine had binged Fuentes' near-nightly monologues from her home in Lorain, Ohio, watching as the college student from suburban Illinois grew into one of the most prominent torchbearers for an increasingly radicalized online right. The 57-year-old Air Force veteran believed Fuentes' furious talk about the dangers of a diversifying America and worried that it placed him in danger. On many nights, she sent paid messages known as super chats to tell him about her own moments of personal crisis and to encourage him, dipping into the little money she made serving chicken paprikash on a Polish food truck. She doubted Fuentes was making much money, no more than $50,000 a year, said her son, Stephen Ryan, who watched Fuentes together with his mom on a 65-inch TV screen. We were barely making it, but we wanted to help him because we saw what he was struggling with, Ryan said in an interview. He was narrator. He was not, in fact, struggling, and should have made that very clear to his fans. Like, imagine you're like working and trying to make ends meet at a food truck, and you're giving your money to this multi-millionaire streamer who's getting, I mean, on one level, like, where was the math? You can see the super chats as they're coming in, the high dollar amounts he's getting. And that's really only just one source of income for him, by the way, because they talk about him making nearly $1 million in super chats since 2025 began. And he has many other revenue streams, not just that. Like, he has memberships, he has access only paid chats, and he sells hats and all sorts of other stuff. So this dude is more than financially comfortable. Yet you have these sad people like struggling to make ends meet, but sending him in total thousands of dollars. While we're talking about Nick Fuentes and his groypers, his supporters, do y'all remember the groyper candidate running for governor in Florida? That's how James Fishback styles himself in his ongoing campaign for the Republican gubernatorial nomination here in Florida, and it's not going well. According to our channel partners at Kalshi, Fishback has only a 9% chance of winning the primary election, while the mainstream Republican candidate, Byron Donalds, has an 85% chance. It's almost like the internet is not real life, and blatant racism combined with edgy extremism, while it might help you go viral, doesn't appeal to most normal, real-world voters. Personally, though, I do find his tears delicious, and am enjoying his political downfall. We can also make money on it. If you use my link below, or enter the promo code BRADP when you sign up with our sponsor Kalshi, you can place a free $20 prediction on James Fishback losing his race. And hopefully buy yourself a nice sweet treat whenever or if his campaign goes down in flames. So, wow. So we get to the total amount that she had given him, and I believe it is several $1,000s, which is unfortunate. But here's more from the Post story. But by the time of her prayer message, Fuentes was already generating a sizable income. Since the start of last year through the end of last month, roughly 11,000 donors have sent Fuentes nearly $900,000 in super chats, a Washington Post analysis found. The Post analyzed more than 1,400 hours of Fuentes' streams using artificial intelligence to tally the donations, which flicker on screen in real time. Fuentes, 27, has been kicked off of most mainstream social networks because of his viral provocations and extreme bigotry. He has said that Adolf Hitler is awesome, that most black people should be imprisoned, and that, quote, organized Jewry has corrupted society, and women should be locked in, quote, breeding gulags and serve only as, quote, mothers or nuns. What a lovely fellow. And the funny thing is that sounds like a out of context quote mining to like make him look bad, but I'm familiar with each and every one of those quotes, and he did in fact say all of those things, and they're not out of context. Now, you can do this thing with Nick Fuentes where it's like, when it's convenient, oh, he's just joking, and then when it's not convenient, oh no, he's serious about that part. But that's like sort of a dishonest approach. You're either clearly making a joke or you're not. But what he does is he says a lot of this stuff in this way that just leaves open the pretense that it's tongue-in-cheek, but also it's basically is what he believes. And I find that to be very distasteful as a political commentator. It's like, if you're going to say some edgy stuff, say it with your chest, but don't play this cat and mouse game where is he joking, is he not, or like the comedian on and comedian off. It's like, I really do have an issue with that. They've got this graph here as well in the Washington Post story that shows just a crazy amount of monthly revenue from super chats. Like the absolute minimum is the 20,000 mark, and he crossed the 100,000 mark a few months back after, I believe that was after his Tucker Carlson interview. So great job with that one, Tucker. But here's where we get into the kind of parasocial aspect where these people, and I do have sympathy, significant sympathy for these individuals who got like sucked into Nick Fuentes's world, dark, very dark world, and became like this parasocial fans of him. And in some sense, I do think they're not like victims isn't the right word, but he clearly has taken, because they do have agency and they did choose to go down this path, but he's also clearly manipulated them and taken advantage of them in some pretty awful ways, as you'll come to see. The kicker at the end here of this story is crazy, like actually crazy and very sad, but we'll get to it. Quote, saying everything I really feel. When Kasubienski's son started watching Fuentes in 2017, he remembers feeling like the streamer was a kindred spirit. Living in Ohio on full-time disability, Ryan, now 36, spent so many hours at home immersed in the streamer's show that he said he began thinking of Fuentes as a little brother. Where Ryan felt nervous, Fuentes seemed self-assured. And over time, he began to believe the streamer was one of the only people being honest about the changes in the United States that everyone pretended they didn't see. There's like so much to unpack in that one paragraph. The fact that this is an example of a young man who's on disability, and maybe rightfully so. I'm not even saying he shouldn't be on disability, but what I'm saying is he's like got way too much free time on his hands, and he sits online on the internet all day and probably isn't very involved in his community or the real world, and gets radicalized to the point where you're about to see how crazy this dude is. Ryan, who's this Fuentes superfan, whose mom is the one working at a food truck and sending thousands of dollars to Fuentes under a false belief of how much money he's making and how he desperately needs their help. He is crazy. And the other piece of this paragraph is like that Ryan felt Fuentes was the only one speaking about changes in the United States. Everyone else was pretending not to see. And I think that's like simultaneously like not true, but also there's probably a grain of truth to the fact that there was such hypersensitivity and censoriousness imposed on some conversations about various aspects of race and identity, that the only people willing to touch on certain topics that people did have feelings about were extreme figures like Fuentes. And that was, in hindsight, very clearly a mistake, that we didn't have more honest conversations about some of these things like immigration and like race and identity and DEI. And it took years where people were so afraid of being called racist that they were unwilling to push back on any of these things. Well, some of the people that were willing to push back on them clearly benefited from that. But here's how like astray these people have been led by Nick Fuentes, and not just him, but the broader kind of hyper online life that they've kind of slowly drifted into. Here's more from the article. Ryan said he didn't agree with all of Fuentes' views or those of his followers, but he believed the influencer was helping expose forbidden truths about the Holocaust and other fraught topics. Ryan said he believes Hitler was Jewish and that the Holocaust was, quote, more of a Jewish-oriented Christian killing event. He started giving Fuentes a few dollars here and there to show his support. I'm sorry, what the He thought Hitler was Jewish. No, and that doesn't make sense. And that the Holocaust was actually Jews killing Christian people. It's just like a complete inversion of reality and a complete detachment from truth or the historical record. The Holocaust is actually one of the most well-documented like mass atrocities in history. So clearly you've lost touch with reality, and Nick Fuentes hasn't exactly helped you reconnect with it. He's egged on this conspiratorial, and what's interesting is now in the last maybe year or so, Nick Fuentes has started to push back on some of the conspiracy stuff that goes too far even for him. But it's like, all right, well, for years you fomented this, you egged this on, and you encouraged this sentiment, and you built up this fan base, and suddenly it's going too far even for you. It's like, well, what did you expect there, Nick? Really not sure that you saw that one, or that you should have seen that one coming. Anyway, more here from the article. By 2021, Ryan had begun watching Fuentes with his mother in Ohio, who had worked as a cook in the Air Force and a cake decorator before starting her food truck. Kasabiensky and her son were avid fans and loved discussing the jokes and storylines on Fuentes' latest stream, said her friend Melissa Camp, who noted that she does not watch the streams. Like her son, Kasabiensky also started sending in super chats, and they both delighted in seeing their names on screen, Ryan said. Though the food truck brought in little income, Ryan said that his mom sent money to Fuentes dozens of times last year, believing he desperately needed the cash. Fuentes, however, was practically swimming in Super Chat funds. In 228 videos since Trump took office in January 2025, donors initiated more than 26,000 Super Chats, totaling more than $896,000. Ryan called the post's findings awesome and said that he hoped Fuentes can put that money to something good. So clearly there's something wrong here. If people who are struggling to get by are sending in thousands of dollars of super chats under the false belief that Nick Fuentes is struggling while he's actually making huge amounts of money, was he lying to them? Was he just omitting this? Was he portraying himself as more financially destitute than he actually was? Either way, there's something very icky about that, and there's something very sad about the way these people seem to have come to view him as somebody that cares about them. But as is made clear through this storyline, and we're going to get to, I think we're coming up to the really disturbing part, he does not give a shit about them. And in fact, you can even tell watching Nick Fuentes' streams, he just has the utmost disdain for the audience that he has cultivated and he has built. And he thinks they are stupid and crazy. And in fairness, some of them are, but it's just sad to see that they so kind of slavishly love him and adore him and support him, and he really does not care about them, and he is such a snake oil salesman. I think he's the opposite. Like somebody like a Candace Owens, I genuinely believe believes her own psychosis. Like I think she actually believes the thing she's saying, because I think she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Nick Fuentes is clearly very smart, and I think he's just deeply cynical and just plays a part and knows that most of what he's saying is not true or is exaggerated to 100th degree. And the resentment has slowly creeped into the audience that he's built up and that he's milked and monetized and betrayed, he doesn't even really hide it anymore. He's actually quite upfront about it, which I do find astonishing, that they don't even have the self-respect to stop caring or to stop supporting him, even as his disdain for them becomes more and more obvious. Anyway, more here. How the game is played. As Fuentes' profile and donations soared, Ryan and his mother continued to spend on super chats. Kasabiensky became Fuentes' most frequent donor last year, giving more than 1,700 across 116 videos, the post analysis shows. Ryan said his mother believed she had given him roughly $5,000 over years of viewing, but that she would have given Fuentes her whole income if she could. That's a cult. Like, that's giving. You cannot tell me that's not giving cult. Come on now. That's giving cult. In Kasabiensky's super chats, she voiced support for Fuentes' views on, quote, unhinged blacks and, quote, men cucks, and said she was, quote, addicted to his leadership and fiery stance. Once a staunch Trump supporter, she told Fuentes she had given away her Trump books and burned her MAGA hat out of disappointment, and that she hoped Fuentes would one day rule as a dictator. Oh, that's normal. That's so, here's the thing. I feel like if you're a political commentator and your fans think that you should be a dictator, that like maybe should be a cause for you to reconsider what you're doing or what you're pushing or what you're saying, because that's actually not normal or good if they're thinking of you like that. And you clearly must be espousing some pretty authoritarian and unhinged things if that's where your fans are ending up. Like PSA, and I have like way fewer fans than Nick Fuentes, and I'm okay with that. But if any of y'all want me to be a dictator, stop. Don't, like, that's crazy. That's the whole point of a dictator. You could place the best person or your favorite person in the world, the person you trust most in the world, into a position of dictatorial authority, and that power will corrupt them because actually power itself is corrupting, and even even the purest person or even the best person cannot be trusted with unconstrained power like that. So it's just, you've built up a real cult of personality if you even have your followers thinking like that. And you should be pushing back on any sentiment they're expressing like that, but instead I think he gasses it up and encourages it. Here's another quote from her that's really actually just quite sad. In several messages, she expressed a maternal affection for the influencer she had never met. Quote, "Love you so much, just like my own kid," she said in one super chat. "I put my full faith behind you. Groiper for life," read another. Again, it's like, you have never met this dude. He doesn't know you from any other random woman on the street. And as you will come to see, he does not give two about this poor, confused woman out in Ohio somewhere. And yet she's viewing him like akin to another son. It's so disturbing and so parasocial, and like, you gotta stop. This is when you need to log off. You need to prevent yourself from becoming so online that you end up like this, because it's really unhealthy. And here's where they just cite some of what makes Fuentes so toxic and evil, especially in this time of rising political violence. He, like Hassan Piker, just regularly on the left, who I think is actually kind of a similar figure to Fuentes, but of course much more mainstream and much more embraced. So Fuentes often speaks in like dangerously violent terms, and it really incites and stirs up the pot, even as the country is just on the brink of and constantly suffering from increased violence and killings and all these terrible things. Here's more from the post. Fuentes and his followers also frequently speak in violent language, with his most devout fans often saying they would, quote, "kill and die for Fuentes," a loyalty pledge so common it is abbreviated as, quote, RKD. So let me explain what that means. So in his chat, they reference their pledge to kill and die for him so often that they just spam the chat with RKD. That is insane. That is actually crazy and disturbing. And I understand that like defenders or apologists of him will say it's just memes, it's just jokes. But like, there's a certain part of it or portion of it that's not. And you can only desensitize people to the idea of violence so much through jokes before they're actually just also desensitized to it not as a joke. And like, it's just absolutely crazy. If you ever find yourself saying you would for someone, then you're in a cult and you've fallen hopelessly astray. And again, needs to touch grass. So anyway, more here. In January, Fuentes said the death of Renee Good, killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, was good because she was, quote, "a typical liberal idiot." Later, while discussing the Trump administration's clashes with protesters in the city, he said, quote, "Please pull the trigger. Please kill them, Mr. President." Fuentes later said he didn't wish for violence, just restored order. This is what pisses me off about this guy. Say it with your chest, my dude. If you please kill them, Mr. President. Then later he goes, "Well, I wasn't asking for violence. I was just saying restore order." That is so fake and two-faced and weaselly. Like, if you're actually that evil and that hateful and that violent, stand on business and say it with your chest. But don't do this thing where you Martin Bailey, you say the edgy thing to get clipped and go viral and rile up your deranged fans, but then when it's time to be held accountable for that statement, you retreat from it. That I have absolutely no respect for. And what's crazy to me is that these fans seem to realize, totally be self-aware of the fact that Nick Fuentes is like openly not caring about them unless they send enough money, and treating his fans differently based on how much money they send. It's like at some point this becomes a humiliation kink or a humiliation fetish, genuinely. Like, listen to this next part. And we still haven't gotten to the craziest part of the story. I know, I'm sorry. It's coming up very soon. Ryan said, quote, "Fuentes pays more attention to what's being said, depending on the dollar amount, and that viewers often strain his patience by giving too little money to begin with." That is crazy. And I've seen this as well in clips of him where he's like reading his super chats and they're not for enough money. They're only for $25 or $50, and they're not for 100 or 200 or whatever. And he's like insulting them and yelling at them. It's like, that is so, especially now that we have the context of how much he's making, that's like exponentially more diabolical, actually. Anyway, quote, "There's realistically no way to talk to him unless you do pay," Ryan said. "When somebody does donate repetitiously, he's much nicer to them because they're literally funding his life." Now, here's where we get to the part of the story that's like genuinely sad and pitiful and so deeply revealing of how cynical and fraudulent Nick Fuentes is. In June, Kasubienski, the woman who we've covered, like gone through with this story, told Fuentes in a super chat that she had been diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. In her last super chat, 18 days before her death in January, she told Fuentes she missed him and had taken a trip to Florida, knowing she had only a little bit of time left to live. Quote, "No TV, just seeing the beauty of the world," she wrote. "I pray daily for the safety of you and my Groiper family. I love you all and will be home soon." After she died, Fuentes said she had been, quote, "a real salt of the earth person who proved his followers were not just, quote, loser white men." Though Fuentes said on stream he would pay a visit to Ohio. This is, of course, to honor her, or visit her grave, or something like that. Ryan said he has not heard from him yet, and all his attempts to contact him have gotten no response. Fuentes did not respond when the Post asked him whether he would visit. And guys, that's important because Fuentes did respond with multiple comments to the Post that they included in the article and answered multiple of their questions. But then when they asked about that, are you going to go visit her, like you said, or go out to Ohio to honor this fan who gave you thousands of dollars from the food truck as you were living large, making millions? And then crickets when she actually passed away. Like, what a sick person he is, actually. Anyway, here's the ending of this article that genuinely is quite sad. Ryan believes Fuentes will still come someday, but suspects he has just been too busy leading his movement. He has considered reaching out again to ask about it over Super Chat by sending more money to get his attention, to ask if he's going to come. I don't know. At some point, this is... like, how much more could Nick Fuentes do to telegraph to his audience that he doesn't give a about them, that he is exploiting them and manipulating them, clearly following him, is not leading these people to more rational or healthy mindsets or perspectives. It's leading them into the brink of insanity and schizophrenia. And he is milking. And what's so funny is he frames himself as like this working class populist champion and regularly accuses other people of being like sellouts to some extent. He represents a working man. Meanwhile, he's like milking food truck workers for every spare penny they have while living lavishly, but suggesting to them that he must need more money and only like demanding more money out of them, while he's actually, and then pretending to care about them and then actually not following through in any way. I don't know, man. I just found this to be so despicable, but so revealing. And it's so sad to me, but also such a sign at the times that someone like Nick Fuentes has any following at all. When he, yes, he's witty, yes, he's funny, yes, he's clearly very intelligent, but he's also clearly decided to use his considerable talents for evil. And he is deeply cynical. And at this point, I don't know how anybody can still see redeeming value in him or the work he's doing, or suggest that he's somehow even helping his audience. I think it's very obvious at this point that he openly disdains them and is exploiting them. And at some point, they're going to need to realize it themselves. It sounds like some of these people, like the ones profiled in this article, are too far gone and will never realize it. But I hope that maybe some others who are a little less, like they've drank some of the Kool-Aid, but they haven't chugged the whole thing yet, might see stories like this and realize they're being taken advantage of.